Hey everybody, and welcome to our newest project for first responder wellness, No One Fights Alone, an in-depth conversation about mental health and addiction in the first responder space. We're joined by your hosts Austin Pedersen and Josh Adams.
Welcome back everybody to the No One Fights Alone podcast. I'm your host Josh, here with Austin. We want to welcome a very special guest with us today. We have the president of the Utah State FOP Lodge, Brent Jex, retired police officer who's been involved with FOP and wellness issues in the state of Utah probably from the dawn of time. His name's always been there as a leader in these movements, and we're excited to have him here with us in Austin's back bedroom dungeon where we do our podcasts.
This is an office, actually.
Okay. No, it's not.
You're letting the eye bolts in the ceiling fool you.
It's kind of like Silence of the Lambs. This is, anyway.
Well, thank you for coming on. I think we kind of just want to open up and ask a few questions like, maybe what made you want to get into this career field, and then kind of how you ended up where you are today.
Oh, well, I did 20 years with West Jordan, and at about year 16, I had my downfall, and it was really one of those things that took me by surprise, because I always had this concept of what PTSD was and what it wasn't, and I'd never pulled the trigger on anybody, and so I was like, well, that can't be it, and didn't understand the accumulation of all the traumas and everything, and so I ended up going through about 20 weeks of therapy, along with all the beautiful stuff that comes with it, the paranoia, the hiding it from the agency, all of those things. And then after that, I was elected as the president of the Utah FOP in 2012, and in 2015 we started our foundation and realized that something needed to be done, and so we just started cranking away at it. I had a guy on my board, Clint Bobrowski from Layton PD, that really spearheaded. He really spearheaded where we are today.
So do you think that, because you were from the wellness standpoint from the beginning, do you think that culture has slowly changed in Utah over the last 10, 12 years, or is it just like a slow battle?
I think it's a kind of a yes and a no. We got this generation coming into law enforcement now that are more than willing to share whatever. But there's still, I think what I see mostly is there are administrators that are fully on board with wellness, and then there are others that say that they are, but they're really not. And so their public facing view is, all things wellness and everything like that, but behind the scenes, you'll still get penalized. So,
Are you seeing that too?
Yeah, the way I see it, very much the same as Brent, is the era that we came up in was duty was a one-sided proposition. The era that these kids are coming up in is duty is now a two-way street. And so you've got administrative people that don't want to buy into that. They love, and I can tell you, it's nice to have people that are very structured in duty and come to work duty and stuff like that. And we sourly want to say, well, they're always asking, well, what's in it for me? And they're not asking what's in it for me. It's more like, what is your duty to me? Here's my duty to you. What's my duty back the other way? And so, it's leadership recognizing and implementing the concept of, we have a duty to protect our people too. Not just send them out and expect them to do everything right and to whatever the fallout is that they just deal with it, internalize it, go see a rinky-dinky EAP, whatever the case is, to check a box. But I think it's mental health. I think it's training. We demand so much of our people. Well, why are we still maintaining the same training thresholds that were in existence when I started? You know, 40 hours. What's 40 hours going to do for anybody? They need 150 hours for what we're asking them to do anymore. So the training, the mental wellness, uh, letting a lot of the science and technology and stuff help replace some of their duties as well, versus just, hey, whatever is the cost effective solution, versus, hey, we need to invest not only in them but also in their work environment so that they can perform their duties in a more advanced way and so forth. So yeah, I think wellness is the one probably has the biggest gap right now, where a lot of people don't want to give deference to it and focus, and because we've carved out for a minute in a space, we've carved out where they've been allowed to just check an easy box. Like here's a low tier, low service EAP and things like that. Don't ask, don't tell type thing, versus asking the question of our people, how are you doing? You know, leaders that want to just be able to look at data sheets and say, okay, well, I know how they're performing, but does that at any point answer how are they doing? So it's okay. Are people that are in a leadership position willing to ask that question, how are you doing? And when they say, I'm not doing well, recognizing, hey, that's my responsibility.
Like their reaction is definitely something that I think every department across the country is different when they have to do something for somebody when they
Yeah.
do say they're not okay.
Yeah.
Because the majority of calls that I see, at least nationally, are all crisis. Right?
Yeah.
There's,
Well, and there's a difference between, like what Josh is saying. There's a difference between, you know, an obligation to help them because now they've disclosed that they're not doing good, and actually caring about what happens to them. And if chiefs out there think that that their guys can't see the difference, I mean, I'll put there's a handful of chiefs in the state that are absolutely looked at as leaders, and Josh is one of them. Because it's about I mean, look, after I went through therapy, I was a better cop. I
Absolutely.
was a better cop. I was a better husband. I was a better father. Because before in those other two categories, I was pretty horrible at it. I had more empathy on calls. I interacted with suspects better. I wasn't without sacrificing officer safety. I was in a better position to interact with suspects, and spend a little bit of time talking to them. It wasn't just a matter of closing this case out, tossing them in jail and moving on to the next. And there were times where that was obviously the answer, but you learn to recognize in other people the deficiencies that you've learned about yourself, and you actually have the opportunity to positively impact somebody else's life, and it the lessons that I learned for the last 4 years of my career, I wish that I would have had in my toolbox the first 16.
yeah, but would you change anything? Right? Like I think it's all about progressing as a person, as a human. Right?
No, I mean, I look back and there are a lot of regrets that I have, but those regrets, it's hard for me to say that I would go back and change anything. There are some decisions that I would do differently, especially in some conversations and some things that I said that I shouldn't have said. But I think as far as the overall progress of it, I think I ended up in the place where I am because of the experiences that I went through. And I even though I wish I didn't have to go through what I went through to get to this point, it is what it is. I mean, I can't hit the rewind button, and there's no mulligans in life.
Yeah, that's very true. And so, We talked a little bit about your career. So what do you think like some of the main aspects of your job are now as the Utah FOP president? Because I think a lot of people don't know the insides of what each lodge does specifically, or states, or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I mean, from the state standpoint, it's I mean, we've got 50 lodges throughout the state. We're just shy of 5,000 members. We have we operate our foundation, which we do wellness, disaster, things like that through, and then we have our we have our legal plan. We have our legislative efforts. We just hired the recently retired director of Post to be our executive director. We have we have all those things, and it just kind of depends on what hat comes in, because we can be we can be sitting here talking about wellness, and then all of a sudden we can have a critical incident come in, and then it spins to making sure that that the members that we have involved in that critical incident have whatever they need, wellness, legal support, peer support, things like that. So it's a constantly, the hats are constantly changing.
Yeah, ever changing. And like you guys were doing something in Utah legislator for like trying to get a grant or something like that for wellness a few years back, weren't you?
Yeah, we've been sounding the wellness drum since 2015. When we started up the foundation, Governor Herbert actually helped us get a grant through CCJJ to get some equipment to produce some videos, and we did 4 or 5 videos. We every time we go to do another one, I mean, things just get hectic. But like Josh was saying at the beginning, when all this started becoming a priority, I mean, we saw companies come out of the woodwork, and companies that nobody ever heard of, and all these things, and everybody was guided for the money, and now we're seeing some of them stick around, and seeing some of them that were obviously just in it for the money. And there was a thing out of the money appropriated last year to where maybe the FOP would just take care of all the retired cops with therapy. And our response was, yeah, we're willing to. We've got the apparatus set up, and then politics come into play, and that that money gets siphoned off elsewhere, and we're like, okay. I mean, right now we're 99% member funded. I mean, our members' dues pays the therapy for any cop in the state. FOP member, non-FOP member, will cover your first 4 visits.
Oh, wow.
And other than we have a link set up on Amazon Smile, so for all the Amazon enthusiasts out there, and I don't know if my wife knows how much I contribute to the to
She doesn't
this
need to
wellness
know.
campaign.
And
But
so does that mean that you guys are technically a nonprofit?
yeah, we're a 501c3
Okay, I did not know that. Interesting. So
on
I mean,
on the foundation side. On the FOP side, we're a 501c8.
Gotcha. But so are you guys doing like fundraisers and all that stuff for that?
We try most of the time when we do the fundraisers, it's usually for an individual cause. We'll have a member that's either got medical bills, or a family member or a child that's had something, and we'll run a fundraiser campaign for them specifically. But other than that, it's just member dues that funds it right now.
We're kind of the fundraising thing. Our culture, it's kind of, and this is my observation, maybe Brent sees it differently, is, if I know somebody needs something, I'll open up my wallet. But when it's a generic fundraiser, it's
Yep.
like we run the other way. Like it's like, oh, we're going to have a big dinner or a barbecue. And it's like, well, there's going to be people that I think are assholes there. Why would I pay money to go to a barbecue and see people I don't like? Versus, hey, this is a barbecue for so and so whose kid has cancer. Well, I don't give a shit about the people I don't like anymore. I'm
Yep.
going to do that.
Spot on.
So yeah, we're funny that way, where the general a general fundraising campaign or something like that, we're tightwads, but and have a rough attitude about it. But yeah, golf tournaments, stuff like that. Well, it's whether or not it depends on what's going around in the carts during the golf tournament seems to be the driving force on participation. So
Absolutely. So I've seen, and I want to jump back to the wellness part with you. Thank you, Josh. But like I've worked with you firsthand, if you remember, with a couple of guys, and so like when that happens for you, are you like the front end person that's making the calls and figuring out how to help someone, or do you have like a team with you?
So we've got a wellness committee, and we've got a chairman of the wellness committee, and I've got two board members that their primary focus is wellness, and so between all of us, we generally get the calls, and whether we have the committee or not, I mean I think everybody in the state's got my phone number, and so it constantly rings, and it's a good thing. I would much rather have people reach out and use the services, or try and figure stuff out, than sit there in silence and think that that nobody understands, and that nobody or worse, that nobody cares. Because I mean, when you're going through the middle of it, like you think you're on an island, and that nobody else is going through or has gone what you've gone through, and it's kind of that internal paranoia that goes through. And so anytime that we can reach out and and be, hey, I've been there, everything that you're describing right now, I remember the exact point in time that that I was in your shoes, and I think it makes a difference.
I think it makes a huge difference, because you're now allowed to come and be in that space with them, where before they're like, I'm alone. And where the minute you're able to open that door and say, hey, I've been there too, I know what you're talking about, you can go be in that space and have that true empathy and say, I get it, versus other people that haven't experienced it or whatever, and our fear of not finding people that are going to get it, makes a huge difference.
Well, I think people, a lot of the times what I hear is like they're surprised when people actually answer the phone. And that's a big one. Like, they're on the verge of something, and they call, but they don't expect people to actually pick up the phone.
Yeah.
It's a strange thing. And so here's the age-old question, and it's probably gathering a little information for myself. Have you seen your calls increase over the last few years?
Yes.
Due to COVID or whatever it may be, right? Like, why do you think that is?
I think one, I think information's getting out there. I think they're doing that, and then I think we have a lot of administrators like Josh that not only get it but support it, and they like I know a lot of Orem guys that feel totally comfortable in going to their chief and saying, I'm not doing too good, and they know they're not going to be penalized for it. And so you open up that avenue, and people are going to be more inclined to get help. Because look, I mean, when you're in that situation, it sucks. I mean, I remember that point in time, and just the loneliness, the depression, I mean, you're already dealing with lack of sleep. You're already dealing with nightmares, anxiety attacks, panic attacks at strange times, and you feel utterly alone. And I think when you realize that there's that lifeline out there, it just opens up so many possibilities that you didn't think were there before.
Yeah, and it involves the whole family too, right? Like the kids, the wife, everything. Because I say this almost every episode, but I'm a firm believer that not everyone needs like a residential treatment center or a hospital or things like that. Like sometimes they just need somebody to talk to, somebody who's going to sit down and listen, no judgment, that kind of thing. Haven't you seen that in your groups that you're running?
Oh yeah, I mean that's just it. Is we're so careful about that stuff, and you talk about the inclusion of family and stuff like that. That was the closely guarded secret in my relationship when I was married. Is the hell if I'm even telling her, you know, and she found, and I was well into therapy before I even disclosed to my wife that I was going to therapy because I was so. And now I look at it as it was. I didn't have any reason to be, but I was scared. You know, because it's like, to me, I liken it where it's like, if you went, you could feel something wrong in your body, whatever, and you're going to the doctor like to find out what this is. Is this like a tumor in my brain, and does it have cancer and all this kind of stuff? Where it's that same thing where it's like, okay, something's wrong here. This is not. I'm not okay. I don't know. How do I find what that is, where it is, and treat what it is? Without sounding the alarm and causing fear and stuff like that. Because part of what we struggle with sometimes, I think, in our relationships is being so there's two sides to it. There's guys that I think tend to bring way too much work home and that share way too much with their spouse, and it causes problems, vicarious trauma, if you want to call it that, to their spouses, to their children, and stuff like that. Or there's the people that's like, yeah, what did where as far as she knew, I was out writing tickets in a school zone all day or whatever, handing stickers to kids type thing. That's all she's gonna know I'm doing,
Yeah.
not child porn cases and stuff like that, and sitting in some autopsy. No, and so, and what that does over the course of, for me, for 20 years, she had no idea what was wrong with me either.
Well, you were trying to protect her, right?
Yeah,
That's
I
my
mean,
guess.
and that's in my mind. I think I'm being benevolent or whatever, taking the high path, and in reality, all that did was one shovel full at a time, carve out a canyon, and to where the ability to come back together was no longer there, and you know and I recognize that I think it hurt her feelings too to find out you've been going to therapy for 6 months. Not what's wrong with you nut job. It's like, you can't tell me you're going to a therapist, you know. And versus, I guess, on that flip side too, where it's like, I think some guys tend to go home and treat their wife as though they are their therapist, which I don't think is necessarily the right balance either.
Yeah.
So
There's somewhere in the middle
yeah,
there.
and that space in the middle for me, I would, based on my experience and what I see and what I read and stuff, is put it out there so that it's part of the culture from the beginning.
Like academy stuff.
Not only just in the academy of discussing these things, but how much does every municipality, how much does every city pay for dental coverage for all of the people that are benefited employees? Whatever your number is per year for this policy. Okay, at the end of the day, what matters more to everybody? Their teeth or their head? Yet we all dutifully go get our teeth scraped every 6 months, because we're trying to avoid the drilling and the filling and the caps and all that kind of expensive, hard, painful treatment. Well, why aren't we doing that with our mindset, our mentality too? Where it's like, hey, why are we not getting get the air pressure check, so to speak, in our head, rotate the tires, whatever you want to call it, and see how we're doing, and make that a cultural thing so that when we're doing good, it's a checker game with a therapist. When we're doing bad, we're talking about issues. But either way, it's okay to go talk and have that as part of our, from A to Z, this is what we do.
And this is all, once again, my opinion, but I think I have an answer for that, and I've thought about it a lot, especially recently, is I just don't think that there is like a set recipe to heal your mental health. And that drives cities away. It drives, people who are paying the bills away from paying it because they're like, well, I could spend a few $1,000s on this guy going to therapy and it just may not work. He may just go home or treatment or whatever, a retreat, whatever it may be, he'll come back and possibly do the same thing. Like, you think, am I?
Well, yeah, but the same thing happens with the dentist too. It's like you can still every 6 months,
Yeah.
and you still wind up having to get a tooth filled every now and again.
Well, I think you got a couple of things to break down there. Is one, I think it's about teaching the ways to recognize and intervene. You know, it's how do you even through all this, you know, and as far as we've come as a profession, where's the training on how to talk to your buddy about, you know, bringing up things that, you know, signs that you see. I know for me it was, and you know, and keeping in mind this was 8 years ago, but I had a buddy of mine that I taught at the academy with, that from another agency, and I remember him coming up to me at the academy one day, and he had been in a shooting. Actually, I think he'd been in a couple of them, but his most recent one had been 4 or 5 years previous to this, and he was telling me, you know, hey, yeah, me and my wife almost got divorced, and I was like, oh, no kidding. And he was like, you know, and kind of saying all this, and he ended with, you know, so hey, if you ever need anything, and I'm like, well, you know, you're the one telling me that you got, you know, so if you need something, you tell me. And he's kind of like, okay, you know, just, and it was, you know, we laugh about it now, but you know, that was his way of seeing some of the things in me that he recognized in himself from before, and he's trying to, you know, he's trying to sound the alarm, but doesn't know how to sound it.
Yeah.
And so,
I don't think most people do know how to sound for, like, and we're talking cop or civilian, right?
Yeah.
I really don't think that people have ever learned how to properly sound the alarm without that, like, offending thing or whatever it
Yeah.
may be, you know?
yeah. Well, but I think it comes down to, it's also I think it's also the reasons why it's concealed from our spouses. You know, you know, because whether it's through training or through our mindset or anything like that, or the type A personality, but we're supposed to be the one that shows up that makes everything okay. You know, if we show up on a scene and it deteriorates, then we didn't do our job, right? And so how we have that conversation with our spouse, and so we get really good at hiding the cause from them, but they're still dealing with the after effects. They still know that we're moody. They still know that we're, you know, that we're being jerks at home, or that we're, you know, distant, or, you know, whatever. I mean, you pick from a list of 50, but our spouses are really kind of the feel that betrayal, because they're the last ones to find out what's going on. Generally, I mean, they see all the symptoms, they're living with the symptoms, and yet we're willing to talk to buddies at work, or, you know, or therapists or anything before we even bring them into the equation. And so now you got kind of a double whammy to work with. You're trying to fix yourself, and you also have a relationship to repair, and you've got that. Even though it's not an intended betrayal, you still have this betrayal to deal with, that we didn't trust them enough to share the information with them. And it sounds harsh. I know it sounds hard, and I don't mean it to be like that if we tell our spouse that they're going to run and tell their friends and stuff like that. It's just, you know, that bad advice that we got in the academy when we went through, and it was, don't take your work home with you. And so it was equated to, it didn't matter what the shift was like. I mean, we could have been on, you know, some horrendous homicide, or we could have been, you know, sitting in a parking lot all night because of a blizzard. And when I got home, how was work? It was fine. You know, it was fine. And then I just, regardless of what it was, I just packaged that up and just pushed it way down until it couldn't stay down anymore.
Yeah, and I don't take it as horrible in the aspect of, like, after doing this with this population for a long time, I think that it's all about protection. Like, you don't want to expose your significant other to what you've seen or what's gone on in a certain extent. Like, I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah, but part of the problem is that now you've got walls built, and and wedges drawn, and now all of a sudden it's one of the things that I noticed was that there like I had this alternate theory going on in my head, and it was a thing where I thought for sure that she was going to kick me out, and she should have. I mean, I was being an asshole. I mean, just I was grumpy, moody. I mean, her and the kids walking on eggshells. I mean, there was never any. I mean, I never destroyed anything like that, but I was just a jerk, and she would have had every right. She would have had every right to slit my throat in the middle of the night, and all she had to do was say, "Well, you guys have seen him in the last 6 months," and I'd be like, "Okay, yeah, justified." But the problem is that once that concept starts entering your head and it starts to interweave with actual reality, you stop investing in the relationship. It's why would I invest in something that's just going to hurt me more down the road? And if I think that whether it's in a day, a week, or a month, or 6 months that it's over, then I'm not gonna invest in that. And we were doing a remodel at the time. We had begun the process of moving our master bedroom into. We converted the downstairs into a master suite, which, by the way, I should have done that years and years ago. But I still had to tile in the shower, and well, one, anybody that knows me knows I'm not a craftsman, and so I still hadn't done the shower, and she kept saying, well, hey, when are you going to do the shower? And in my mind, I'm like, oh, okay, so I'm going to bust my butt to do the shower, and then your next husband gets to do that. I'm like, no, screw that. He can tile his own shower, that type of a thing. And then the more you think it, the more it cements in, and the more it becomes a reality, and it ends up being a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so, part of the secret is earlier intervention. It's how do we start to unravel that before it gets into this big jumbled knot. When we can do either some preventative stuff or early intervention stuff, and catch the train before it gets so far down the tracks that the only result is just a complete upheaval of life.
Yeah, I think as you're talking about, and I'm doing some reflection and introspection for myself, is what comes to mind is when you talk about communication and how do you talk about these things. Well, okay, we are taught in an official capacity, here's the facts, here's a narrative, so we can dictate a case report, which is very, we're not using descriptive adjectives, and we're not, it's facts. He said this, she said that, evidence says this, that I noticed this, whatever the case is. And then when we communicate with our coworkers, the language we're using to talk about our problems is dark humor, and making fun of people's tragedy, and downplaying the impact of trauma on other people as well as on ourselves and stuff. So it's like, and then you go home and it's like, well, the only language I knew how to use at home was hi honey, everything's fine. And our definition of taking work home was like, in my mind, if I didn't take a case file home, well, then I didn't take work home. But it had nothing to do with there's no, when they talk about that advice, there's no differentiation. Don't take your work headspace home, not paperwork, not your laptop. That's not what they should have been very specific. It would have been nice to be like, yeah, you clear your head. A guy's better getting off at 5 o'clock and going and kicking his ass for a half hour in the weight room and going home versus just going home if he needs to clear his head, so that he doesn't bring work home. And so it's, when you talk about language and communication, one of the number one things I see when I meet with people up at Chateau and in other group areas and one-on-one is they're like, I didn't know how to talk about it. You know, I mean, tears are flowing and stuff. They're like, this is the first conversation. I've been a cop for 22 years. I've been there, I've done it. This is the first time I've had a conversation in 22 years in a language, hearing other people talk about this stuff. I have never heard this before, you know, and it's just this very, it's a sweet moment for him. I mean, there's some anguish and stuff attached to it, but it's like, it is a huge breakthrough where it's like they finally found the words and heard the words that they can talk about it now. Not dark humor with the guys at work, just the facts on paper, and yeah, dear, I had a wonderful day. And now they're like, no, here's this fourth set of words, vocabulary, that's actually being fully, and the sad thing is that language would work in every other space. Mm-hmm. Maybe not the police report so much, but as far as talking with our coworkers, our humanistic interactions, that language would work with all of them instead of trying to learn and communicate in multiple languages.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense. It really does. I mean, is that something you got to look and how do you change that and do it earlier? What's the intervention? Is it the academy? Is it the pre-interview? Is it, you know?
I think it's a lot of those things.
Yeah, I mean, I think the academy does a better job now than when we went through. But I mean, you got to understand these recruits and these cadets are, I mean, they're sipping through a fire hose, and they're trying to take all this in. I think one of the keys is through spouses. When I was going through therapy, I brought my wife to a couple of the later sessions, and she learned how to draw things out. And so even now, like one of the misnomers that I had was that once you do therapy, you're done and gone. You know, but it's PTS. I mean, it's kind of like cancer, where yeah, you can be in remission for a while, but then it may pop back up. And I learned that, in fact, this year, when and I didn't even pick up on it, but my wife did, you know, and she was able to draw some things out that all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I'm going through it again. Okay, and way early intervention, you know, where it was just, you know, some quick tune-ups, and it's that recognition. But it's, you know, I think part of our biggest problem is that we put it off so long. And the way I've always talked about it is that it's like this big basin, you know, with a drain in the middle. And early on in our career, I mean, everything that we're accumulating, and we're just kind of in this lazy river floating around, and not a big deal, and just whatever. And you know, as we start to come to the center, and it starts to speed up a little bit, we equate where we're at with being a veteran cop. Okay, now I'm being pessimistic about everything. You know, I'm judgmental. I'm paranoid about, you know, things like that, and you know, that just means that I'm a salty cop now. You know, because everybody's lying to me and all this stuff. But really, what it is it's all these effects that are drawing us in. And it's not until we're spinning really fast and about to get sucked right down the bottom of the drain that all of a sudden we're like, oh no, this is a problem. And how many guys get sucked down the drain and spit out the other side before they're like, how did I not see that coming? You know, and if we can intervene on those outer banks and keep it a lazy river, you know, I think it works out. It works out better, and guys just need to understand that there are plenty of people out there to talk to, and that it's no longer a thing of I don't know where to go, or I don't know who to talk to. I mean, I know that every one of Josh's cops, I know that they can walk into his office. I know that same thing at, you know, 10 other agencies. And for those that don't have the support of the agencies, I mean, like I said, everybody's got my number, and I usually field, you know, 3-4 calls a month on stuff like that. But it's learning how to talk to our wives just enough to where we can offload some of the stress without causing that secondary trauma. I mean, some of the most traumatic times during my career, and I tried like crazy to hide it from my wife, you know, and it was like crazy trying to hide. I mean, a friend of mine shot and killed in the line of duty, and I was there, and I tried to get home, and I actually faked like I was asleep when she came in so that I wouldn't have to address it. That's what we do. And we think we're protecting them. We think we're protecting ourselves by pushing it down, but man, it rears its head at the most inconvenient times.
Yeah, it eats at people. And that's a conversation too I have to have with people, that it's like, this is going to be really hard, by the way, this whole therapy, part of looking at yourself and doing all those things. And it's going to take a lot of work. Mm-hmm. That's just something that a lot of people don't realize. It's forever, right? The rest of your life, it's work. It gets easier, it gets harder, it gets easier, and all that stuff. But I think that's where we're going to end at. Thank you for coming on. Definitely enjoyed having you, share your experiences and what you do for the first responder community. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to this segment of No One Fights Alone. No One Fights Alone is sponsored by
Chateau Recovery is a 16-bed treatment facility nestled in the foothills of the Wasatch Mountains in Midway, Utah. Chateau's First Responder Resiliency Program is designed to treat the unique challenges and issues that first responders encounter in the course of their careers. Chateau's comprehensive and highly individualized approach to treatment addresses more than just the presenting issues. It addresses the why. Each of their seasoned, trauma-trained, and culturally competent therapists utilize evidence-based, specialized therapies to treat trauma at its core and enable clients to begin the healing process while developing a resilient and healthy relationship with stress. Chateau Recovery is trusted by departments and agencies from around the country to treat responders and veterans. In fact, it is one of only a handful of facilities nationwide that is vetted and approved to treat members of the Fraternal Order of Police. For more information, or to speak to a representative, go to chateaurecovery.com or call 888-507-5031.
No One Fights Alone is also sponsored by First Responder Trauma Counselors. First Responder Trauma Counselors are subject matter experts in proactive behavioral health care for frontline workers through their National Peer Support Academy. This 40-hour all badges, all uniforms, and all scrubs educational experience helps to create caring, honest, and empathetic peer support relationships with your fellow frontline workers. The FRTC National Peer Support Academy is taught by actual first responders who have gone back to school to become culturally competent, licensed behavioral health clinicians that teach from lived experiences, not just theories from books. This fast-paced, immersive educational academy will not just change your life, it will help you save the lives of others. For additional details, visit 991overwatch.org or call 970-222-419-3. This could be the most life-changing academy you'll ever attend.